Welcome to Bicycle Retail Radio, the bicycle industry podcast that brings retailers, vendors, advocates, and thought leaders to the mic for honest discussions about the latest issues facing retailers while taking an in-depth look at the person within the profession.
Registration is officially open, and we want you to join us for the second annual NBDA Retailer Summit, May 22nd and 23rd in Bentonville, Arkansas. Our 2024 program features 2 dynamic days of presentations, panel discussions, and breakout sessions aimed to unite retailers and suppliers in conversation. Tickets include an event gift bag, tailored educational events, networking cocktail event and select meals, early access to the Bentonville Bike Fest, not to mention ample riding time on world-class trails. You won't want to miss it, so don't. Get registered today at nbda.com.
All right, thank you for joining us on Bicycle Retail Radio. One of our favorite episodes, this is the NBDA News Hour, co-hosted with our friends from Human Powered Solutions. I'm Heather Mason, NBDA President. I'm joined today by Mr. Chad Picard, NBDA Board Member and P2 Moderator. Welcome, Chad.
Hello, everybody.
All right, so today we have Mr. Jay Townley and Fred Clements. Mike Fritz is unable to join today.
Hello.
Hi. The team at Human Powered Solutions has over 245 years of experience. Considered the data wizards, their monthly newsletter, the Micromobility Reporter, is a dynamic resource for the industry, featuring timely news and in-depth analysis about the latest in human-powered transportation, including bicycles, e-bicycles, e-scooters, and rideshare. Included is a focus on supply chain issues, technology, and both business and consumer trends that drive the marketplace.
Yes, our monthly news feature focuses on the articles contained within this report, getting a more in-depth view, no-nonsense look, and a first-hand seat with the experts. If you want to receive the email version of this resource, I highly suggest you visit humanpoweredsolutions.com and sign up to receive your own copy. You will not regret it. So with that, let's dive in. There's so much to get into. The title of the February newsletter, well, that had me a little frazzled. It read, Fear-Mongering, Journalistic Malpractice, and a Welcoming Smile. I had to read it like 8 times. I'm getting the sense that January was a little bit of a wild ride. Jay, Fred?
Well, actually, that's Fred's headline, and he got that from looking at the articles. Yeah, it was a wild ride in that January is one of those months where everything goes up for grabs. We're waiting for year-end reports. The financials aren't all in, but we kind of got guesses going on. And in our world right now, we've got 2 wars that are running. They are definitely having an impact on supply chains and supply lines, depending on different industries. Not all industries, certainly not ours in particular, but many others. And we've got economies that are in flux. Now, our economy happens to be doing well by comparison. And so that creates a whole bunch of questions all by itself. Why aren't we doing better in the bike business, as an example? Why isn't outdoor recreation and sports doing sporting goods doing better? Yeah, it was a wild ride. No less so than February will be, because we are coming out of, one of our articles stated, out of the post-pandemic era to a new economic footing. We don't know exactly what it is. It's not returning to the past, that's for sure. And we've also got more economic uncertainty facing certain portions of the market, with other things like the stock market doing well, like generally Wall Street being reasonably happy. But we've got banks that are having some problems. We still have a situation for especially bike retailers where they are hard pressed in some cases to be able to get money from a bank. Sometimes those banks, by the way, don't have money anymore to loan. Others are putting higher restrictions on them. So it's Fred, I don't know if, from reading through the articles if you want to add to that, but that's pretty much my take at this point on January.
No, I'm with you, Jay. It's exactly how I view. I guess we'll get more into some of the detail of all this as we talk a little further.
Yeah, and I'll say great job on this month's issue. Reading through the first week of January press, it seems like you captured the financial situation. Definitely was turbulent, lots of news. And then we come to the January 8th article from Rick Vosper. Compared to last year, 2024 does not look so bad after all. Can you give our listeners a summary of the article and HPS takeaways for retailers and the industry at large?
Well, I looked at it, as I said, in my analysis of it. I got that article, I set it aside, I looked at it, I went back and looked at it, a week went by, and I kept thinking about it. And the data that was provided by Patrick Hogan from People for Bikes was, I think, very telling. There were two things that stuck out at me. First of all, the article itself is trying to put, I think, a very as good a picture as you can put on a situation that is not very good for the industry, and it comes through when we get to the detail that Rick goes into. Right now, he's predicting a 2024 that is going to be slightly better. Patrick Hogan's numbers show about 9%. I don't know if I don't know what it is. I'm not doubting what Patrick is looking at because he gets this from his forecasting group. I do think that one of the things that needs to be done is People for Bikes specifically needs to go beyond 2015 in looking at its data. The world did not begin in 2015. The bike industry in the United States did not begin in 2015. I've talked to several people about this in the industry that are on the board of People for Bikes and found general agreement because the data does exist. So I do think we need to look at trend lines. I think their forecast group needs to look at trend lines that go back at least 10, perhaps 15 years. Those numbers are all available so that we could see what the past brings to the present from the standpoint of what the market looks like. But with all that said, a slight 9% increase in 2024 over 2023, which is a very much of a down year, is just a little ray of hope that we're going to see more inventory. In fact, the prediction that's in that article is that we're going to bleed off the excess of the inventory. And we will get toward in 2025 what would be, and I use this term loosely, a normal market. I really don't think it's going to be a normal market for many of the reasons that the other articles that are touched on get into. Not the least of which is, are we going to be able to come out of the discounting spiral that we found ourselves in? But with that said, a very well done article by Rick Vosper. Patrick Hogan contributed very meaningful data, good data that was you were able to look at and get a feel for. One of the things that I spent a week looking at was the bar chart in that article, which Fred put into our newsletter since that's public domain. And the point I was raising there was if you take just 2015, which this goes back to what they say they've got data for, 2015, out through 2024, and you look at the trend lines. In other words, look at a straight line from the high point to the low points. It's a continuing downward curve.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are other ways to look at this. Some of the leading economists that have been most accurate in their forecasts of the economy are relying more and more on trend lining. And that's why I'm suggesting and emphasizing that I think the bike industry and the Bike Industry Association needs to go past 2015. so that we get better trend lining when we look at the forecast for the future. We're able to include more data because it's meaningful data. It's market data. We could go back to the original bike boom if we need to 1971 and carry that forward, or 69, pre-bike boom. At any rate, very well done article. Nice contribution of stats. I think it raised a number of questions, however, that the industry needs to deal with.
Yeah, I love every time Rick comes out with an article, and it is one of those read it again, come back to it. And it's great to see Patrick Hogan. He's such an asset to the industry and the data that he's providing there. Definitely lots for us to consider and just watch. That article about Scott Sports getting a multi-million-dollar loan, I'm sensing they are not alone, and that other companies might themselves find themselves in the same situation to continue operations. I feel that we have like this compounding thing happening, and I'm just worried about the health of a lot of our suppliers. Jay, are you getting a sense that it's not just Scott Sports? I know that this is just, our sense of what's going on, but what are your thoughts about that, seeing the news from Scott Sports?
Yeah, the Scott Sports article was, I think, indicative of what's going on behind the scenes in the industry. And what we had in the COVID period, pandemic, were larger corporations. In this case, Scott Sports is a profitable company. The article makes it very clear. Scott Sports is a profitable company. However, because of the lack of capital right now that's available to them, they had to get I think it was $176 million loan from their owner, a Korean company. Now this goes to what happened during the COVID. The multinationals with lots of money bought up what were, in our particular case, everybody wanted a bike, everybody wanted an e-bike. We were shining in the sporting goods category. So a lot of our companies, very quietly, I don't think this made a lot of news in the industry, got bought up by multinationals, bigger corporations. Some of them were lucky, like in this case, Scott Sports, a profitable company in a conglomerate of many sports-related companies, has a large parent that has enough money available that they're able to make them what for most of us is a pretty good sized loan. I mean, if any of the four of us went out and got $176 million as a loan, we'd be reasonably happy. That's a lot of money. They got it, as according to the article, a lot of this they're bringing in so they make payroll, just the basics. That's because we don't have the sales at one end and we got inventory stuck in the middle. That Scott Sports is no different than any of the rest of the brands. So that's a long way around saying, yeah, I think this is just the tip of the iceberg for what we are seeing.
Mm-hmm.
You might recall Cigna going back a couple of months. That's a case of an even larger corporation with most of its investments in real estate actually collapsing and taking with it a whole bunch of entities in the bike business in the accessory side. Parts and accessories in the bike business, first in the United States, where we saw bankruptcies and closures, and then it cascaded into the bike business in Europe. And now that corporation continues to collapse on itself. Its real estate business is now collapsing. So, and that, by the way, at the time was the largest dissolution or bankruptcy in Europe when that occurred. So it's happening around the world, but our industry has been so insular. We've had so few public companies, and even where there are public companies, they're on exchanges like Tokyo, Taipei, that are really difficult for us to get good information on. That we are not transparent.
Yeah.
And so my fear is there's more of that coming. I hope I'm wrong. I really do. But I do think there's more of this. Other shoes will drop.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to wait, but it is it doesn't make me feel good. It makes me, uncomfortable with the situation for sure.
Yeah.
And I might just jump in here quickly. one of the charts in Mr. Vosberg's article, People for Bikes Research Again, supplier inventory at the end of January up 60% from norm. So we haven't cleared it through yet. And even though the picture is much better at retail, where he says at retail, we're within the line of inventory that's appropriate for the season, the suppliers are still jammed, and we're, like it or not, we're an ecosystem. When the suppliers hurt, everyone feels some pain here, and it's driving a lot of what we'll talk to about in a little later, some discounting and all of this. But a 60% means that we're not really through the COVID or the impacts of the COVID epidemic to me, and especially if 2024, I think a 9% increase in consumer demand and sales is optimistic. I've seen numbers more in the 2% or so. So and is it only bikes? Well, no, because the outdoor industry has been moaning how things are soft, and REI is having layoffs. So for whatever reason, people are taking a pause from buying their outdoor equipment, including bicycles. And we still have a lot of stuff to move through the system, and not that strong consumer demand to help us do it.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that leads us to the next article about Marketplace. Retailers are stuck in a cycle of constant sales as the brands seek solace in discounting, and we now have created this vicious discount cycle. What is MSRP anymore? I would be interested to hear from Fred about his thoughts on where we are at as an industry, and even more, press into how we can stimulate sales. Discounts don't really seem to move the needle right now and are not helping the issue at all.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Discounts do not move the needle. Discounts do move some buyers, though. I mean, it's not right to say that people don't buy on price sometimes, but I think for the most part, especially for an enthusiast, someone that's really committed, or at least a middle tier cyclist, they're looking at a complete value package. It's not just the price, but things like availability. Do you have it in the size and color that I want? What else am I getting in terms of service and shopping experience? So I think when I first started I think it was 89 when I started with the NBDA, it was a different time, but the same problem, of suggested retail pricing and discounting harming the dealer who has a cost of doing business, typically higher than other forms of distribution. So in those days, I think we cited Harley Phillips here a few times. He said, just raise your prices, or if you can't do it across the board, raise the price on one category and just see what happens. Learn from that, but you can't be chasing, as an IBD with the cost structure we have in place, the price only shopper, really. So.
It's interesting, Fred. I really appreciate your insight into that. And yes, a great reference there. It is a great question. In our P2 groups, we're continuing to have these kind of conversations with retailers. And we've been talking about how we can remove barriers to do business with us and create memorable experiences, connect to the community. I really liked the article that highlighted the article in Bicycling Magazine. The one great thing all great bike shops know was about encouraging bike shop owners, managers, and employees to get past any prejudices and drop that attitude and replace it with an open mind, a welcoming smile, and a great attitude for anyone who walks into our shop. I think everyone should read that article. And I'm really glad you had it in there. Jay, I don't know how you and your team finds all the articles to cover in the Reporter, but I'm glad. So, I mean, you put this in there for a reason. You obviously agree with the content in this article.
I agree with it 100%. I have been worried for quite some time about the attitude in many bike shops that chases away women, as an example, that ignores people like me, being old people, that will not pay attention to what they consider a Fred, And no disrespect, Fred, but that, you know,
I've been
that,
there.
Fred looks unfrazzled.
yeah, it's you know, if you don't walk the talk in a lot of shops, if you can't go in and talk about the century you just rode or the cliff you just fell off of, you're just not accepted. And that's not what the bike industry or the bike business is about at retail. The industry portions of it maybe, but not the bike business. What you're in business for is retail, to serve customers. And our customer has changed. And I don't think we, to this day, know exactly how profoundly they changed in 2021, 2022. I think we got a pretty good clue. We got many ideas on it, but one of the constants was more women getting into cycling, more women who had never ridden before, more women who were looking for something. I'm not sure if we could provide it all or even tried to, but it boils down to exactly that, Heather. I mean, you've been a retailer. Chad, you've been in the retail business.
Mhm.
You got to smile. You got to be nice to people. You know, if there's a way you could deal with the cultural issues of the insider crowd,
Yeah.
and that's provide a place for them where they could sit and talk to the wrench, or could talk to some people that are of like thinking. At the same time, keep them away from, or give them coffee, but keep them away from the general public. And so, uh, you know, some of the best bike shops in the world that I've seen have mom as a greeter, and I mean that absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I bring this up because I know every retailer is different and every business is different, but we have some top retailers who just don't do discounts. They don't do discounts, they just don't do it, and they're super profitable. And how they drive sales is by smiling, greeting, getting to know the customer, and creating solutions, or also at the same time inspiring that customer with the next place to ride, the next thing to tackle. And so I think that when Chad brought up the discount question, yeah, it's a great question. We're seeing a lot of discounting right now, but we can battle it by just being open and embracing and smiling and yeah. I don't know, Chad, what do you think about this? Because I know that this comes up in our P2 groups a lot.
Yeah, I think that there's no one more focused on our own prices than our industry. You know, the mechanic working in our shop, the salesperson, and not, you know, as Fred said earlier, not every customer is a discount buyer. There are customers with that value time way more than money, and they're willing to pay to get the experience that they want. And you know, that experience isn't a bike, it's time that they can spend with their kids on a bike with a helmet and gloves and water bottle and a bike rack and all those other things. And when we can create that experience at retail, we win. And when we can do it without discounting, we win even more. And to add to all the other things, like come out from behind the counter to greet your customer, smile when you answer the phone. There's so many small things you can do to increase the possibility of closing a sale. I think, yeah, they're challenging times, but I think now more than ever, we have opportunities to get people back in our stores as they have used those, we'll call them COVID bikes, and they're now starting to need service. Where are they going to go? Our bike stores.
I think to me, there's just sort of a natural built-in tension at retail, hiring expertise or hiring a personality. And those who are into it, you know, you have to have some expertise in the shop, but you also need the other side. So you can be an expert in cycling, but we need more focus on being an expert human being, of being of service, of being kind and open and talking to people as people, not always telegraphing your expertise. You got to do both, but I see how hard it must be to bring in people that actually know something, and do it on a short period of time with not a whole lot of pay, but also get a winning personality. But you have to do both.
Yeah, and I think that goes to another issue that we don't bring up enough. And we, as an industry, the retailers tend to put people out on the floor that don't want to be there.
Mm.
And it's for the reason Fred points out. Well, this person knows all there is to know about the mechanics of a bike. They know all about derailleurs. They know all about how to deal with bottom brackets. They got all the expertise in the world. And that's not what even the knowledgeable consumer wants. And so it's putting people out on the sales floor that want to be there, that want to sell, that want to be with other people, that enjoy doing that. And you can pick them out. You can actually interview for them. But you've got to make that decision that the expertise belongs in the shop in many cases, because it simply does not know how to communicate in a proper, effective way as a human being, as Fred says. And also, it's knowing when to shut up, which comes with honing that knowledge that you become a professional salesperson. And you know, after a few minutes with a customer, who you're going to sell, what you're going to say, how often you're going to ask, what questions you're going to ask. Some people you will talk more to, some people you talk less to. But as Fred says, I think the key here is you want people who want to be human beings and want to serve on that sales floor, as opposed to just knowledge, because that can be very, very, very dangerous and detrimental.
Yeah, and those people are out there, teachers, pastors. They're all looking for part-time work if they love cycling as an activity or an experience.
Yep.
Another article that got me fired up was the one about just in time makes a comeback from the Wall Street Journal Logistics Report. Inventory has been a key topic in our P2 groups, and a topic that I have been covering at the CABDA shows. Fred, can you give us some of your best tips for managing inventory?
Well, oh, sure. So I think, People for Bikes, again, referencing some of the research that Rick pointed out, noted that inventory at retail is, quote, normal and even healthy for this time of year, unquote. The excess supply is at the supply side at the moment. And so they're doing something right. And reading that sentence couldn't have made me more proud of retailers of actually managing their business for their needs and markets based on their own seasonality and not falling for too many incentives. I'm going to help my brand solve their inventory problem by overbuying. They didn't do that. And it made me so happy and proud that people are, just in time is a fundamentally sound principle to apply to inventory. And yet it is vulnerable to disruption like we had with COVID. And so if you can't count on supply being reliable, it all falls apart. But I think a more normal, technology can help this. A lot of things can help this, moving towards buying inventory as you need it. Yes, you have to get ahead of it somehow, but watch your open to buy. Don't be tempted by the next fancy thing too much, and work a plan. And I think the retail side, that's not saying every retailer is free of inventory woes. I mean, yes, everyone, it's human nature to speculate or to try to take advantage of disruption in a marketplace to sell more. So maybe some good retailers overstocked. But if you believe the People for Bikes numbers, and I have no reason not to, I want to believe it, retail is not in that bad a shape inventory wise. And so, yeah, I guess that's that.
Well, I think Fred is right. And just in time and globalization got mixed up. And many people felt they were the same thing, and they're not. JIT started with Toyota in Japan, and the Taiwanese bicycle industry has a very long history of working with Toyota specifically. There was a group in Taiwan that Fred is familiar with because NBDA was a member of the the A group, A team. And the A team was a group of, in fact, it was the bulk of the manufacturers in Taiwan, all of those brands that make parts, accessories, bicycles. and they would meet on a regular basis, but once a week once or twice a year, they would put whole tours together of industry engineers and managers and send them to Japan to go to Toyota to spend a week with Toyota learning about JIT and how to manage it. So it's no surprise to me that it's coming back, because if you're going to manage inventory properly, you're going to eventually come back to a system that if it isn't JIT, it's something very close to it. And it's not dependent on globalization. You don't have to take your sourcing and have it all in Asia. You could have some sourcing in the United States, some sourcing in North America, but it doesn't change.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about being able to do your production planning, look at the flow of product at the supply side, take into account now, because they're doing it with AI. Artificial intelligence is being employed to begin to warn about and to tell the purchasers what they should do to make sure that they're accounting for particular disruption. The Suez Canal is a good example. Now, we knew the Panama Canal was running out of water, so that was going to be a problem. But who would have thought we had a problem with the Suez Canal? Well, we did. We do. Now, that affects mostly Europe. I think there's only about 12% of the freight for the United States that actually comes through the Suez. And I have very little, if any, of that is the bicycle related side of the business. But I'm gratified because I think that's needed. And I was glad to see the article because it's an acknowledgement that overall, despite all of these problems we've got that continue to disrupt, and we'll have problems that will continue to disrupt going forward, JIT is accommodating and is learning and teaching and adjusting so that the good managers can use that as a methodology to control their inventory and to make sure their production flows are even where they should be and on time.
Yeah, there's a lot here, and Jay, you brought up the word learning and that education that's required. I also think as we move this direction, the communication is so important. That piece really needs to happen. If it's retailers communicating to suppliers what their hot inventory items are or what they expect their needs to be, so we can really facilitate a smoother transition here, because I'd hate to have a retailer not communicate that, and then come season when they're trying to be smart about not doing a big preseason, then they can't get what they want because they haven't communicated those needs. So open those lines of communication as we navigate these times, I think, is really important. Gosh, it doesn't feel so great to see the articles, several articles mentioning layoffs. I feel like we're all trying to do more with less resources, less people now as expenses climb. In conversations with retailers, we're looking at, okay, where we can make strategic moves, and we're notice operating expenses are going up. REI laid off more than 300 employees. The Sports Illustrated announcement of major layoffs. Macy's is cutting over 2,000 jobs. It seems like we need qualified people, and but we need to cut expenses. So it's a vicious cycle. Jay, have you seen anything like this in history? Is there anything, I'm sure, maybe, I don't know, anything that you could shed light on this? Because it just looks so dire.
It's not unusual for this time of the year to begin with. So there's a certain amount of this, the layoffs. There was an article that we did, I think in November, Fred, where the Bloomberg, I believe, was pointing out that this is the season. We're moving past December. We're moving toward the first quarter of the new year. And there are companies that are going to lay people off because it's a way for their financial people to hedge their bet. As you said, Heather, it's going to reduce cost. The first thing, and I've been through a number of situations where we've had to reduce cost in a fairly large company. And the first thing you look at is payroll. That's your largest expense, even for a specialty bike retailer. It's right up there as number one, probably number two in some companies, small retailers, but still your payroll is going to be one of your biggest expenses for corporations, manufacturers, certainly. And so that's the first thing you reach out to. Underlying this, however, are some other things that are cropping up in the layoff arena. And those are the ones I worry like you about, because they're coming in companies that are having financial strain. That's in our business, we've got to take a careful look at why are these companies laying people off? Why are they downsizing? Why are they trying to affect a cost savings in a market? So I paid particular attention to the sporting goods category, which, by the way, out of the ranked categories, the federal government keeps data on a monthly basis on retail sales. Sporting goods for the last several months has been at the very bottom. We're at 0 or 0.1% growth or contribution to the 3.5% GDP growth in the country.
Ooh.
So it's not just bicycles; it's bicycles as a part of sporting goods. And so, when I see the layoffs in that industry, I'll take a closer look. The REI layoff is particularly telling for two reasons. One, that is the leading specialty sports retailer. And number two, the president wrote a letter that's in the article that was, I think, very forthright and honest, because it said, we're going to have a rough 2024. And so we've got to prepare for that. And that was the way they were starting to prepare, keeping in mind that they are a consumer-owned company. They're a co-op. So they have an obligation to tell the shareholders, the owners, more than what we'll get out of a lot of our private companies in our industry. Heather, you're correct. Those are the ones that worry me. I have never seen the combination of layoffs like I'm seeing now. So it's that latter category. Some of these companies are doing it because they can do it. Amazon. I don't get too worried about Amazon from the standpoint of what they're doing to move back and forth and shut down some of the things they've been working on or some of the warehouse space. I really get worried about an REI.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Smile.
Do you see with a large amount of layoffs in the tech sector with Facebook and Google, do you think that sends a message to vo-tech schools or people looking for careers to maybe second guess something on the tech side and move more towards something like the bike industry or vo-tech skills, I guess, to use that language?
I don't think it's going to affect that as much as an example, what I draw from the tech people laying off, it's some of the articles that I've read lately. Those layoffs are in people that have chosen to work at home. Some of this is the companies laid down. These are big companies with lots of people, and they laid down their rules, and they want people to come back to work. They want them in the office space at least 3 days a week. And so these companies, when they went out there, started their layoffs with people that wanted to stay home all the time. They were productive. They were getting the job done, by the way. This wasn't anything about their work productivity. This had really to do with the fact that they were out there working and weren't coming in the office every day. So you got to be a little bit careful. You got to look at the sector where you're looking at the layoff, and the tech people. First thing I look at is who are they laying off, because you can eventually dig that out of the articles, the news that's out there. To answer your question directly, no.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we have a lot of retailers, with all these layoffs, we still have retailers struggling to find qualified people or even in the same boat, needing to reduce people on staff to control costs. Fred, any tips you would give to retailers looking to find people or even how to maximize the people that they have?
I think so. I think productivity is key, and how do you measure it? What's reasonable? We also have the challenge of we can't pay retail employees enough to give them a long-term career path. It's not easy. I think I've referenced before, our daughter is a physical therapist, and she got out of college and she's working, for a physical therapist, and they do hour-long segments, 45 minutes of treatment, 15 minutes where she takes notes and does the follow-up, and then they do it again. Well, when she first became more experienced and the challenges changed, she took 2 patients per hour, and even up to 3 sometimes. You have someone there doing their exercises, you're watching, you're doing the second person. So some of it, I think, is the productivity within your store. How much can you get without burning them out from your employees? And especially if you want to pay them a little more to keep them, maybe you need fewer bodies, but better processes in terms of getting more out of them. In terms of recruiting, something Dan Mann, the consultant, once said, always be recruiting. And what he would do and urged others to do is always have business cards in your pocket. And when you're out in the world and you're at a restaurant, or you have a very friendly clerk or a server or anyone that you come across that seems to be energetic, happy, engaging, they're just full of life. Have you ever thought about working in a bike shop? Here's my card. If you have any interest, let's talk about it. Well, and always be recruiting. It helps you get the people that have the personality type that you're looking for. The theory being you could always teach them the technical side. And you'll have to, of course, if you bring in newbies. But I think that was something that really resonated with me, the notion that recruiting isn't just something you put on your calendar, you do when you have an opening. You do it all the time. And you keep people on a list of who might be interested. And you emphasize the things that you can give. If you can't pay them $100,000 a year, whatever you can pay them, but it's a lifestyle choice for a lot of people. Maybe they don't have to be a whole career there, but they have the opportunity to work in an industry that helps people, that is active, full of vibrant people and wonderful product. That's a selling point. It's every job doesn't have to be a cubicle job, or to Jay's point, working on a computer from home, like a lot of us do. Working in a bike shop has special benefits. That's not necessarily only dollars. Once again, kind of like back to the discounting question. It's not all dollars. And I think that struck me as something that Dan Mann used to say that I really think makes sense, is always be recruiting, always looking for those next people. Don't just do it when you have an emergency, someone just quit.
Fred, I love that advice. And we were actually in a P2 meeting yesterday, and one of our retailers shared that he is continually recruiting, and he actually has an ad that says says hiring, and then every Wednesday night at the same time he has like a mass hiring session, and he's just keeps those great applications on file, and when he needs someone, he always has this pool of people, or sometimes he just brings them right on board. But pretty interesting, and I love that advice. I'm sad Mike's not here. I always love when Mike Fritz is able to join us. It has been great to see him at the CABDA shows, and I know he's been giving seminars, updates on what's happening in the e-bike sector in regards to safe storage, handling. He's not here today with us, but Jay, can you give us just a sense of how things are going? I know you've been sitting with Mike at the shows and taking part in conversations with him.
Well, it's, as you're aware, Heather, there's an awful lot going on at this point. There is, I saw this morning from Mike, the House bill that Representative Torres from the city of New York has introduced, that is being supported in the Senate by Senator Schumer, who everybody I think is aware from his appearances is the majority leader, is moving forward. There was, we talked because of the representing the NBDA, we talked to Representative Torrey's legislative director, who is responsible for the bill. And in the structure of a congressional office, it's the legislative director who does the work to make sure the bills move forward for the boss, for the congressman or woman. The gentleman assured us that this bill was going to be, it's got enough bipartisan support, there's enough momentum to carry it forward, that it was going to be moved by unanimous consent, which is very rare. That is simply a voice vote in either chamber, and it's through. It goes to the president's desk. This bill specifically it's very short, it's 2 pages. It says that by act of Congress, the Consumer Product Safety Commission is going to fast track lithium-ion battery regulation at the CPSC level. We questioned whether they were aware of this. We were told, no uncertain terms, Consumer Product Safety Commission is in accord and supports this. So that the 2271, UL 2271 portion of what we now look at as voluntary standards would be fast-tracked by CPSC and become federal regulation before the end of this year. And that in turn would move where the fire commissioner in the city of New York wants to go. It would give them a lot more clout in New York City. It would match up now to what's going on in the Senate and House of the state of New York. It would get CPSC moving partway through what it needs to do. It still needs to come up with a complete reg for 2849, which is the UL standard for complete e-bike drive systems. And the bigger job that CPSC has to do is they got to update the antiquated federal bike standard for bicycles. But with that said, it's a piece of taking a very important issue that evidently is important enough that it's got bipartisan support in this Congress, which to me is amazing. And not only does it have bipartisan support, it's going to move by unanimous consent. And there was a notice this morning that indeed is what's happening over on the House side. Now, the House is in recess, strangely enough. It's in recess till 28 February now. But there's every probability that this bill is going to move forward. And so we're going to see a mandatory federal reg from CPSC on lithium-ion batteries before the end of this year.
Excellent, Jay. Appreciate the update, and we're definitely keeping a hard watch on that. Listeners, we did recently, working with Human Powered Solutions, update the NBDA Human Powered Solutions safety precautions on e-bike handling and more. And you can get that updated document on the NBDA webpage, NBDA Connects e-bike resources, and find that there. Thank you to the team at Human Powered Solutions for working so diligently with us to update that.
Jay, it's been great seeing you at the CABDA shows, and you've been presenting on how retailers can use their data to improve operations. Any takeaways you'd share?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, the dealers that I've been fortunate enough to interact with at the CABDA shows have been excellent. And for the most part, I think dealers recognize the value of their own data. What's missing, I find so far in the 4 groups that I've been able to work with at the 2 CABDA shows, is structure. And what I've advised is that they look at the NBDA for those that aren't members, and secondly, that when you become an NBDA member, look at P2, realizing that there's a cost. And I've had a P2 member in every group, and gotten the endorsement of a specialty bike retailer, a fellow bike shop owner, saying, yes, this is worth the monthly fee, this is worth your time, this is worth the commitment to the in-face meetings. Now I'm backing all that up because it goes to the simple things. And if you see my presentation, I actually have a section on door counters. because I'm trying to get across the point that the simple metrics that you get from a door counter, and for the dealers that say I can't spend $49.95 on a door counter because I show door counters that are $50. I take them to the poker chip method, where you put white poker chips out in the morning in a fishbowl, and you got red poker chips and blue poker chips. Put white poker chips every time. They got to be disciplined to do this. You only audit this for a period of time. You put a white poker chip for everybody that walks in the store, put a blue one or a red one in for everybody that buys a product, and you can decide that could be only bikes or e-bikes. And then you've got one for service if you want to count that as well. And it's simple math. Count the white ones, count the blue ones for sales, and you got a percentage. National average for close rates is 19%. So you've got, in the cost of doing business study, close rates for a number of different size stores. So I take them to the cost of doing business study as something they should be aware of, they should have to compare their business to, because now all that data makes sense. They can compare their store to other stores of equal size doing equal business in the same metro markets, in the same city centers, or the city market size. And again, I normally find a dealer that's done that. They've invested in the point of the cost doing business study, and they'll hold up there and say, yeah, it's worth the expense at $329 for a dealer.
Yep, correct.
Yep. And $365 or $369 for a non-dealer, or $390. It doesn't matter. It's well worth it it's available to any dealer in the country. So it's dealers want to get into this. They need to know the information. What I'm finding universally they need to be helped with is how. And I think right now you guys are sitting on the hows for a dealer, and it's NBDA membership, cost of doing business study, your advice, and then a P2 group is an interactive daily consultation group that they can work with to ask questions anytime they want to.
Yeah, I mean, Jay, I have to tell you, I've watched your seminars at the CABDA shows, and I see the audience, and I've seen you give the presentation using the poker chips as an example of how you can do this. And it's just like I watch the light bulbs go off in people's heads, and I see them frantically taking down notes. So when you're saying it's the how to, I'm definitely connecting with that, because that's the conversations we're having in our P2 group. Like, okay, we know all this. What do we do now? And who do we hold accountable? And how do we measure this? And once you determine what you need to do, and then you actually put people in charge of it and set goals and hold people accountable, that's when stuff gets done. And there doesn't need to be barriers like a cost of a door counter. We can figure out creative ways to get this stuff done because we need to. Yeah, absolutely love it. I'm so thankful that you and Mike have been joining us at the CABDA shows, and to Jim for putting together those shows. What a tremendous effort that Jim has done. The CABDA Midwest Expo, he badged over 1,600 retailers through the door. A tremendous feat. And I know the East show is shaping up to be great. So anyone listening, get to that East show. So much here. I guess, Fred, I'm going to throw it over. This is, I know, as always, your favorite question on the News Hour episode. We're looking at March 2024, specific advice for retailers to focus on this March.
Well, but this is my favorite question. I always try to put a unique spin on something, and so I guess item one is, if the People for Bikes research is correct, and if inventory at retail is appropriate for seasonal norms, then the first thing I would say, that if you're not in the seasonal norm as an IBD, what did you do wrong? Can you look back and see where you might have made a mistake and just put it in your mind for future reference as to what I might do differently in the future? I mean, to really take a hard look at that. And then secondly, I think we all monitor Rick Vosper's Facebook group, Cycling Industry Recovery. Every couple of months, this same thing comes up. Some retailer will bemoan the difficulty and, oh, the business is bad, we're just hanging on. and someone will post and complain about it. You're just negative. What is wrong with you? And then it goes back and forth. You're a Pollyanna. You're just too negative. Well, I think both are legitimate ways of dealing with uncertainty. It's which way do you want to be? Um, uh, so I think I guess I'm kind of stumbling here a little bit, but one of the things I like about bicycle retail, both the negative and the positive guys, is there's a certain, I mean, the people that criticize bike shops are everywhere and they say, oh, they're just stubborn bike shops. Well, I want to use a synonym. It's called grit. It's called tenacity. And if you're in a situation where you're just hanging on, I think that's okay. Stay alive through a difficult coming year if you want to. I look back at it's another movie reference, the Dawn Wall. They free climbed the Dawn Wall in Yosemite for the first time. Really difficult. Tommy Caldwell could not do this one section free. Just kept falling and falling. And they had ropes, thank goodness, but kept falling, couldn't do it. Day after day went, he couldn't do this one section on this massive wall. He found a way. He went down to the left and found, these are the best climbers in the world, found a slightly different way to approach that, and he succeeded. So sometimes there is something to be said for just staying alive. We can talk about big picture this, and you need to do that and think about big trends. But if you're in a situation where you're struggling, and sometimes grit works, sometimes tenacity works. And I want to encourage, if you want to be in the business and you're willing and you have the necessary grit and gumption, don't give up too soon. That's all.
I love that, Fred.
Jay, where should our suppliers be focused right now?
Well, that's a hard question, a difficult question. At this point, I think suppliers need to be, and I've said this before, and Heather used the term too about learning and education. I think too many suppliers are still not forthright with retailers. I think there's too many suppliers that still don't understand the value of their retailers. So if there's anything here that those that work with retailers, obviously the D2C guys are going to make their own decision how they're going to interface. But for those in the bicycle distribution channels of distribution that rely on retailers, I think the best thing they could do at this particular point is communicate effectively, be transparent. And to Fred's point, you're dealing with a lot of tenacious, good to gritty retailers out there who are going to survive. And you can learn a lot from them, suppliers. You can also learn not only how to survive, you can learn how you're going to thrive in the future, because these are the people that are going to carry your brand forward. And so that also leads to, I think suppliers need to rethink the way in which they relate to and work with retailers. And I'll leave it at that because there's a long discussion there. But I think those key points is, hey, folks, as suppliers, stop and think about the value of the retailers you've got. Work with them, learn from them, help them survive, and then in turn, see what they can do to help your business.
Yeah, I just want to jump in real quick, Jay, because I could not agree more. And we've been hosting our workshops at the cabinet shows, and suppliers have a chance to join in those workshops and sit in the conversation with retailers. And we've had several suppliers doing that. And it's just been a wow moment for everyone in the room. And we're all learning from each other. So yeah, I agree 100%. Chad, sorry, I just needed to jump in there. I'll throw it over to you now.
So it's such a wealth of information. We can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing your expertise with our listeners so that they are able to stay up to date on the important topics facing the industry. Thank you, Fred. Thank you, Jay.
You're welcome.
Yeah,
You
thank you all.
gentlemen. Looking forward to next month.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you for listening to Bicycle Retail Radio. This podcast is designed specifically for the bicycle industry, dedicated to strengthening our retailers and cycling community. If it is your first episode, we urge you to take the time and listen to our past episodes.
The NBDA values the importance of deep interpersonal connections, and our Retailer Summit is designed to be a catalyst for just that. Attending the Retailer Summit in May ensures you meet the right people who know the bicycle industry, respect your business, and want to help you grow, both personally and professionally. It's an easy way to take your business to the next level through networking, engaging with panelists and speakers, problem solving with your fellow attendees, followed by ample riding time on world-class trails. Go to nbda.com/retailer summit for more information and to get your tickets today.